Hi, this tutorial is going to show you how to create an interactive activity using PowerPoint that's a little more complex than a single question with answer choices. This is going to be more similar to a Jeopardy game board format. So it's going to require more slides and more hyperlinks, but the same content can be used to create a number of different interactive lessons. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this layout to blank so that we have a clean space to work with. And in creating sort of a game board, one of the quickest ways to do it is to go to Insert and make use of the word art because it's already formatted. You just want to be careful as far as choosing word art that's readable. So I tend to stick with the darker font choices there. I'm going to make a header here. And we're just going to move this towards the top. I think I'm going to make it a little bigger though. So I'm going to highlight the text and go here to Home. And there I can change the font size. I can just kind of test some different font sizes. That looks good. It kind of stretches over most of the slide. There we go. And now I can insert some word art to create some categories for a Jeopardy game. So I think I'm going to choose a different one. Let's see what this looks like. That looks fun. Oh, that is fun looking. Okay, so I'm just going to create some technology related categories here and just kind of arrange them across the slides. Let's do apps. I'm going to do a copy paste of this word art here to save me some steps. So I'm going to hold down the Control key and hit C for copy. And then I'm going to click outside of the slide to deselect this word art. There we go. And I'm going to hold down the Control key and hit V as in Valentine. Control V pastes a copy of this word art. So all I have to do here is change the word to add another category. I like this word art. I think this will make it look fun. Control V to add another piece of word art. And let's do just making some categories related to technology here. Of course, as you look at this, think of curriculum topics in your area and how you could divide those into categories. And let's see, let's just do one more about, let's say digital citizenship. I don't want my category here to take up that much space. So for this category, I think I'm going to make the font a little smaller. See how that looks with the others. That's not too bad. My categories are not quite centered, and if you're particular like I am, you're going to want to scooch them on over. So one way to do that is to kind of start over here and click and drag across till they're all selected, and then you can move them all at once. So I think that looks a little better. Okay, so I've got some basic categories here. Now you want to add links, text that will be links to individual questions under those categories. So I'm going to continue to use word art. And let's try using this one this time. So we can have 100-point questions. That will be the easiest questions. And I like the little grid lines that pop up with PowerPoint because then you can line up your text boxes really easy. So I'm going to copy this with Control C, that number, and now with Control V I can paste it. Control V, paste. See how helpful those grid lines are and just kind of helping you get it just so All right, so what I did is I just used one piece of word art to make a 100 category, and then I copied and pasted it 3 times. Yeah, I could do this forever, but I won't. So now I'm going to go through and change this a little bit. So I have a 200, 300, and 400 category. Now, I am not going to go through all these steps for each of these categories, and you don't have to either. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to click and drag until all of these text boxes here are selected. Now I'm going to hold down my Control key and hit C for copy. And now I'm going to click out here to deselect those and hold down the Control key and hit V as in Valentine. And don't freak out. All you have to do is come over here until you see the cursor with the 4 arrows there. And you move those over, and look at that. And if I want to be super lazy here, I can just copy both of these at the same time and hit Control C. And then Control V, and look at that. I've made a copy of all of those. And by selecting all of them at once, I can move them together. Oh, that's why we like undo. This is the undo button. There we go. All right, so I have a basic Jeopardy game board set up. Didn't take too long to set up. So now let's talk about creating slides for questions. The easiest way to go about this is to have your questions already written out in order. So on a separate sheet of paper, you may have typed out 4 app questions in order from easy to hard for your 1, 2, 3, and 400 point questions, and then Web 2.0 questions in order from easy to hard, and then devices and digital citizenship. Basically, your categories going from left to right, and then in order from easiest to most difficult. And then you can create them in that order as you build your slide presentation. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to insert a new slide. And so this will be my first question slide. So this will be a question for apps at the 100 point level. So maybe an easy. So maybe an easy question app. And you can use the word art again. You can just use just because it's so easy to format, it's already formatted for you. Okay, so here is a question about apps. So let's pretend that this is a question that you present to your students and they have to figure out the answer. I'm going to put the answer on this slide too. I'm going to insert word art, make it look a little different, and let's make the blue word art be the answer. Now, when students first come to this slide, if they choose this question, we don't want them to be able to see the answer to the question because we want them to have a chance to figure it out. So this is what I'm going to do. I have the answer selected. Pretend this is the answer to this question. And I'm going to go over here to animations. And I'm just going to add a basic animation. I keep it simple, either appear or fade. You can do whatever you want, but usually the quicker, easier animations are what you want. So just by clicking fade, this has a fade animation. And by default, when you add an animation, it will not show up until you click a mouse button, and that's good. So let's try this out. We're going to go to slideshow from current slide. Try that again. Okay, there we go. So we only have the question appear, and then by clicking, the answer appears. So this is what the students see here. All right. Now you always want some sort of clip art or something here in the corner that will link back to your Jeopardy game board. So I'm just going to go over here to the shapes and maybe insert an arrow. Let's see, they have all kinds of great shapes. I'm just going to insert a little arrow shape here. And I know that arrow shape will mean go back to the original slide. All right, so this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to add a link to this shape so it will take us from this slide back to the Technology Jeopardy game board. So I'm going to right click. If you ever see this, click cancel and right click again. Then you should get the menu you want. Then go to hyperlink, and you're going to hyperlink to a place in this document. And I want to hyperlink to slide number 1 because that's the game board. Click OK. So yay, now it's hyperlinked and we can test it. So let's go to slideshow from current slide. Here's our question. There's the answer. Now we need to go back and choose another question. And here we are back at our original game board. So let's get out of presentation mode here. To link from the game board to this question, what we're going to do is we are going to hyperlink the word art. So I'm going to highlight the 100, right click, and go to hyperlink, a place in this document. So I know that this is the question I created about apps for 100 points, my easiest app question. So I'm going to click OK. And you're going to notice that it changes the color of your font a bit. This color, it's a pretty dark blue. I think it'd be okay if you wanted it to be black. If you want your hyperlinks to stay black when you link word art or text, what you can do is you can go up here to design. And then over here where it says variant, there's a little arrow down button. When you click that, colors is one of your choices. If you go all the way at the end to customize colors, you see that the hyperlink color by default is this dark blue. So if you want, you could go in here and change it to black. It shows the followed hyperlink color to be purple, which means once we follow that hyperlink, it's going to change purple. I would go ahead and keep it like that. That way, when you are playing this with your students and going back and forth to this Jeopardy game board, you can tell which questions have been used because their links will have turned purple. So I'm going to click Save. And now we still have that nice black, easy to read font. Now let's test it and see if it changes purple. So I'm going to go over here to slideshow. All right, so we're going to try out our hyperlink. Here is the question about apps. Here is the answer. Now let's go back home. And it's purple now, so the students know they can't go back to that question. We've already done that. All right, so now we're ready to create slides for the rest of our questions. And you're probably thinking, oh my goodness, look at all the slides we have to create. This is going to take forever. Why would anybody want to do this? Well, don't worry. We have already created one question slide here. All you have to do is right click over here where you see the thumbnail and duplicate slide. All you have to do now is change your words to the new question and to the new answer. The answer's already animated. You don't have to add an animation. The arrow is already linked back to the home slide. You don't have to add a link. All you have to do is change the text. And so go down your list of questions and continue to right click, duplicate slide, and then type in your next question. Right click, duplicate the slide over here, and then type in your next question and answer. Just go down your question and answer list. Once you're completely finished typing in your answers, then you go back here to this Technology Jeopardy game board and you start linking these numbers to your slides. So right click, hyperlink, So this is my Jeopardy slide. This was my 100-point question. Here's my 200-point app question. Right click, hyperlink. Here, let me do that again. There we go. Hyperlink. There's my Jeopardy slide. That was my 100-point slide, 200-point slide. Here's my 300-point slide. Highlight 400, right click, hyperlink. So remember, this was our home page, our 100, 200, 300, 400-point slide, and click OK. Now you're going to have a lot more slides than this because you're going to have slides for each one of these questions. So one thing you might consider doing, that what you definitely want to do, is once you hyperlink all of these questions to these numbers, you want to go through and test it in presentation mode, definitely before you present it to students. So you want to go through and test out each hyperlink to make sure it goes to the correct question, and have your list handy so you know which number goes to which question. So building a game like this in PowerPoint doesn't take as much time as you think. And once you've created one of these types of games, it would be very easy to change the text a bit in the questions to match a new lesson and a new subject area. All you'd have to do is change the text, and the slides are already linked to the home page. So that is how we create a PowerPoint interactive lesson that has a Jeopardy style format.